Hello and welcome to AM Guitar with me, Anjay. Today we are going to be looking at buying your first electric guitar. So you decided you want to play guitar, or you have a child, friend, sibling, parent who wishes to play guitar, and you're buying the first electric guitar. There are a few things you need to look at in order to get the best guitar for a beginner, because what beginners need can be very different to what experienced players need. When I was young, the choices weren't great. I mean, I bought my first guitar from a car boot sale for £6 and it was a little acoustic thing. And then my second guitar was actually a second-hand Charvette from a local guitar store in Addlestone that my mum and I went halves on. Fantastic guitar, wish I could find it, and I was very, very lucky to get it. But the choices then were second-hand or Encore, which was terrible, Marlin, which was terrible, Westfield, which was terrible, or then spending lots of money on a Fender. Squiers weren't that great at the time, Epiphones were okay, Gibsons were expensive, so your choices were very limited. Now there's far more choice. The cheaper guitars are getting much better, but cheaper isn't always better for beginners. So, first things first, what are you looking for if you're walking into a shop? Now, if you walk into a shop, you should set your budget for no less than £200 for a beginner's guitar, because cheaper guitars in shops have an overhead and tend to just not be quite as good. That said, you might find a great one. So if you're going in and you're the person buying and you want to look at the guitars, or even if you're the person who's buying for somebody and you want to look at the guitars, here are a few things to look for. The first thing is, when you pick the guitar up, is it heavy as hell or is it easy to hold? Because if you've got a younger person playing, if it's too heavy, they just won't enjoy playing it. If it's a really young person, you might even want to look at 3/4 size mini guitars that people like Fender make. But assuming we're buying a full-size guitar, so this is a Squier Strat. This is an old one, this is a second-hand one, which we'll talk about in a minute. But things to look for. First, are the strings 1,000 miles away from the fretboard? And what I mean by that is, if you look at it and the string is up here somewhere, it's going to be incredibly hard to play. They're going to really struggle with it because a beginner won't have the strength in their fingers to push the strings down. So you want to make sure that the action is okay. Now, if you're in a shop, there's something you can do about that if it's not, but I'll talk about that in a second. The second thing is, run your fingers along the edge. Does it catch on anything? Do your thumbs or your fingers or whatever catch on the frets? Because sharp fret edges are really annoying as a beginner, and again, make playing uncomfortable and difficult. If you're going to be playing it and you found one that doesn't hurt your fingers, you can press it down, all that sort of thing, just make sure you're happy with its look, because look is important. I was very lucky with this one. It's a second-hand one, it looks great, plays great. As a beginner, those are the key things to look for, though. Is it playable? Are you going to be able to pick it up, hold it, and play it? Is it going to cut my fingers? Is it going to hurt me? Now, if you're in a shop, certain brands to look out for, new ones we're talking about here. Fender Squiers, the Affinity series, are really good. Don't go for the Bullet if you're a beginner. Epiphone do some kind of Les Paul specials that are around the 200 mark. They play really well. Don't go for the SL range if you see one, because again, they're the lower quality. You'll see guitars like East Coast guitars, you'll see Encores still. You might be lucky and pick one up and it'd be really nice. Again, if the fret edges are horrible, it's going to be a horrible playing experience. So if you're running your hand up and down and it's like running down a saw, or you're having to push down telephone cables, it's going to be uncomfortable, you're not going to enjoy playing it. So spend a bit more on a better guitar and you're more likely to stick with it, because nothing puts a beginner off a guitar than one that's unplayable. Now, if you can't go into a shop and look for something, and we're not talking about second hand yet, I'll come to that in a second. if you're buying from a website, expect to pay a little bit more. I talk about Harley Benson guitars all the time on here. I wouldn't recommend them for a beginner because it's a little bit random what you get with quality sometimes. If you know how to set a guitar up, it's easy to sort a lot of the problems, but if you're a beginner, you're not going to know how to do that. You're not going to know how to set the action or file down frets. And to be quite honest, you're not going to want to. So be prepared to spend a little bit more on a brand new guitar online. But again, look at the Epiphones, look at the Squiers. Ibanez do incredibly good quality, low-end, low-cost guitars. Dean used to, don't know if they still do. I'm sure they still make really good low-end guitars. Cort is another make that makes very good low-cost guitars. Jackson make them. I've got a fantastic Jackson Monarch that was less than £250. So look around. Ibanez, Cort, Jackson, Squier, Epiphone, all great makes that you'll find in almost any shop. Another good one is Vintage. They make fantastic cheap guitars as well. And you'll find those in a lot of kind of mum and pop type shops. But again, if you're doing it online, go for those kind of brands. If you're walking into a shop, you get a bit more flexibility because you can then start trying second-hand guitars as well. So a lot of shops will have second-hand guitars in that are much better value than the new guitars. And if you're in the shop, you get the chance to do exactly the same thing. Does the action feel good? Are the frets nice? And what you'll often find with the second-hand guitar is that it's already been set up. So it probably plays better than a lot of the new ones, and you're going to get a lot more for your money. And again, looking at the Epiphones and the Squiers, because you don't need a Strat, you don't need a Fender Strat. A Squier Strat will suit a beginner perfectly. Personally, for me, I would recommend, as I said, the Affinity range, just about anything in the Affinity range. If you're looking at Squiers, Classic Vibe Series, more expensive, but incredibly well-made guitars. But again, be prepared to spend a little bit more. Don't look for anything sub 100 because you're going to waste your money. If you're buying it second-hand, you might be able to get away with sub 100 or sub 200. But again, if you're buying it on eBay, you don't know what you're going to get, and you could be very disappointed in the playability of it. So if you're buying online, pay more, get something that you recognize the name of, get a good quality guitar. If you are going into a shop, make sure you check to see if it's playable. Now, the other thing you're going to need is something to play it into. Now, my recommendation for an affordable, fantastic amplifier would be a Boss Katana, because you can get reasonably inexpensive, especially the Mark I katanas are reasonably inexpensive. They have everything that you need to get going with. They have all the effects built in. You won't need to buy effects pedals, and you can play around with it. But the basic settings on the amp are simple, and they sound great, and they're affordable. One of the biggest mistakes I see beginners making is buying tiny little sort of package amps that came with their guitar and get really put off because it sounds awful. And it sounds awful because it has a tiny rubbish little speaker, no depth to the box whatsoever. So again, be prepared to spend a little bit more to get something a little better. Or your other option is to go for something like this. If you're not needing to play loud in the house, go for kind of a pocket amp type thing. So this is my Donna Plexitone, which sounds a bit like a Marshall. You plug it straight in the bottom of the guitar, put some headphones in it. You can also put like a CD player through it. Sounds good enough to play quite happily to yourself. I use this for quiet practice, and it's rechargeable. You could also get maybe a Zoom multi-effects unit, which has a headphone out and is £60 or something. So if you're looking to play loudly, get a decent sized amp with at least a 10-inch speaker. If you're looking just to practice and play quietly, get yourself a headphone amp or a little effects unit. Don't worry about buying effects pedals if you're just beginning or you're getting your kid a guitar or something. Just get an amp that has a distortion channel and a clean channel, or like I said, something like this, and that'll be everything they need to play. When thinking about styles of guitar, think about what you want to play. So I'm not a particularly big Strat fan, but I like this one just because I was playing some Stevie Ray Vaughan style stuff and he plays a Strat, so it made sense. When I first started playing, what I should have bought really was a Fender Jaguar style guitar, because that's what my guitar hero at the time, Kurt Cobain, played. So look at what your heroes play and then find the budget option for it. So if they play a Fender Jaguar, look for a Squier Jaguar. If they play a Gibson Les Paul, find a Epiphone Les Paul that's a decent quality, standard or a special. Because then you'll be able to play the kind of music and sound like your heroes. Some guitars are better for some types of music. Telecasters will play anything. So if you aren't sure, I would say get a Telecaster, because you'll be able to play any type of music on a Telecaster. If you're into really heavy stuff, something with humbuckers, which are two pickups that look like they're stuck together. If you're playing blues and Indian rock and that kind of stuff, then something with single coils like this, where it's just the one coil in each position, will do you absolutely fine. So, spend a bit more than you probably anticipated, save up, make sure you've got at least £200 to buy a guitar with, either new in the shop, second hand in the shop, definitely, 200 quid should get you something good. Online, give yourself 250 to be able to buy something, because you're not going to be able to play it before. Although, if you're buying it for yourself, you'll be able to send it back if it's no good. If you're buying it as a present, again, check all the things. If it's no good, send it back, change your mind on what you're going to do. And then buy an amplifier that will cover your needs. A Boss guitar will do you absolutely fine. Some of the Fender Champions are absolutely fine. And there are lots of kind of, Voxes make very good affordable amps still. There are affordable Marshall amps that you can get. But get something that has at least a 10-inch speaker or a headphone amp of some description. Now, one last tip. When I was talking about the guitars having kind of really high action, where the string's really far off the board, if you're buying it from a shop and you really like the guitar and everything about it's great, but not the action or something you don't quite like, pay for a setup. It'll be about £60 in most UK guitar shops. Most guitar shops will do it, or know someone who can, because what that will do is it'll sort all the frets out, it'll sort the action out, it'll make it playable, get the pickups to the right height, and it'll make it a really playable guitar. So even if you buy a slightly cheaper one, and you've got, so maybe you say, I've got £250, I'll buy a £200 guitar, spend 50 or 60 on a setup, you'll end up with a guitar that's much easier to play. So another bonus about going into the shop to buy your first guitar is you can get them to give you advice and then set it up for you, then you pick it up a few days later. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments. If I've missed any tips, please put them in the comments. Until next time, like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.